this video. Today we're going to be talking about the mind versus knowing. There's a difference between the mind and what is actually known. The mind believes very strongly that it knows things, but actually knowing is a completely different thing. The mind itself is very information-led. It continues on its path believing that the information that it's been fed is the way to go forward. But this isn't necessarily true. Information isn't real power. Information is actually fake power. And I've said this in a previous video, but real power is actually wisdom. Part of the mind that is created from how the mind works is fear. And it's fear that continues on its path from survival. And fear is it's more of a subtle thing than we may even realize. It's such an unconscious thing. But every single person on this earth has got fear in them. We were potentially even born with fear. If you think about trauma, this is how fear is basically created. And the traumas and the patterns that we've experienced in this life are very much based on the patterns that we've experienced in past lives as well. So in these trauma states that we find ourselves, and that basically means the trauma or the pattern of the trauma being repeated in your life, when you go into survival mode, that's when fear comes up, because it has to, because your ego has to be there to help you survive. But what's actually happened is that we have believed for so long that the mind is so powerful, and therefore fear must be power, and being scared must be power, and therefore the mind must be so powerful that if we keep giving ourselves lots of information, let's say through social media or anything else, then we do have the power. And so we continue on this path of fake power, but it's not actually real power. The fear that's created through our mind comes from this place inside of us that actually believes that we are not enough. It's the not enough that's creating this fear. And therefore what we do is we keep on seeking what's outside of us to be able to complete us, because we're in so much fear. Actually what's going on is because we are in trauma state all the time. We are in survival all the time. And this is how the fear is created. But actually fear is a complete illusion. It's not real. There is no such thing as fear. But because of what we've experienced, and because our mind opens up and it lets the information in, and remember this is information outside of us, then it continues on this path of, oh, well then my mind must be correct, and therefore my mind must be powerful. And then what happens sometimes is that our mind, we believe to some degree that our mind is the knowing, but actually that is not the knowing. And originally, like I said, this video is titled The Mind versus Knowing. So I want to talk about what knowing actually is now. Knowing is the embodiment of truth. Knowing is in the heart. This is what knowing actually is. So knowing is not the mind. We don't know things, we actually know things in the mind, through the mind. We only actually know things through the heart. So the knowing is the complete truth. That's what actual knowing is. Knowing is the embodiment of truth. Knowing who you are and what you are at the most core level possible. That is what knowing actually is. Knowing is basically like the whispers that's always been there in your life. Knowing things just by the whispers, but never really maybe wanting to put too much attention on it. That's what knowing actually is. Even though you know deep down what it is, it's in your body. You remember, it's the embodiment of truth. That is what knowing is, and it's all in your heart. But it might come across as almost whispers that you may or may not really hear. So what I mean by knowing being inside of you, like a whisper that's always been there. For example, there's so many different knowings, and everyone has a different knowing inside of them. The knowing of the universal knowings, and knowings of the individual knowings as well, which is again like the embodiment of truth. Now, knowing, for example, one example I can say of a knowing could be that the universe is inside of you, that you are the universe. So we might have been told this, right? Through social media, we've heard people say this before, but the universe is inside of you, that everything you need is right inside, and you inside of you is the reflection of the universe. Now we know that through information, through people saying that, something maybe you've read. That's knowing, that's not knowing, it's what the mind seems to know, right? But do we actually know this? As in, again, the embodiment of truth. Are you actually practicing this through your body? Are you actually practicing that you are the universe? Or are you just fake knowing it through the mind? By knowing it, you are experiencing this fact through the body. That's the difference. So if we actually know that we are the universe, we actually know it, then we have to put that into practice, because remember, it's about the embodiment of it, not the mind. The knowing is the embodiment. So therefore we have to practice that. So we have to practice being like the universe, and that means we have to do what the universe does. So for example, are you practicing self-reliance? Are you practicing being able to hold yourself? Are you practicing self-nourishment? Are you practicing self-love? The reason why knowing is so important is because knowing is exactly what's needed for safety to come in. When we are in our knowing, when we are in our heart, which is the same thing, this is where true safety lies. When we are scared, when we feel the fear, if we go within ourselves and really connect to our heart, which is the knowing of the who and what you are, remember this is in your body, then you can actually learn to feel safe within yourself. Whatever situation you're actually in, that's how it works. So before we continue on this belief that the mind is the superpower, and it's the mind that must continue on the way it has, because this is where actual power is, we really have to go deeper, because what's underneath the mind are actual truth, which are your feelings, which are your inner energy. That's where everything lies, and this is where the knowing is. And remember, we have come here to be in our bodies. We have come here to practice, experience what we need to experience in this life through our body. This is where the knowing is. The knowing is not in your mind. The knowing does not come from information. It's all the practice that you're doing within your body, within your heart. This is where the true knowing is, and that is where the true power is.